Hey guys, how's it going? I am Danconia and welcome to the Overwatch World Cup Roundup. Yes, the third round of qualifiers in Thailand have taken place, and believe it or not, there's only one left after this, in France. So that should be really interesting, but I'll tell you what was interesting, these qualifiers. As I thought, they were pretty close. I don't think anyone could argue that. This was really interesting to see who was going to come out on top here. And it didn't actually go as I expected. So I should just not make any predictions in the future because I'm rubbish. Yeah. Anyway, let's start off with the results, shall we? And then we'll look at who qualified and what's going on around here. So, the first game was Denmark taking on Thailand. This was also always going to be an interesting game because this was a test of how good these two teams were. Denmark did come out on top 3-1, however. Thailand a little bit disappointing. I honestly thought they put on a better show than they did, but again, very close. I didn't see a lot of these games, by the way, because of the time they're on. I've had a lot to do recently. I'll just leave it at that. After that, we had Spain taking on Australia. This was a 3-1 for Australia. This is more of what I expected. Spain, as I thought, did turn out to be the weakest team out of these six. And to be quite honest, it's unfortunate because, yes, Spain have some good players. Unfortunately, all of those players seem to be supports. So, it's a bit like the Overwatch ladder in some respects. 4 or 5 support mains and not much else doesn't make a team capable of winning games. So, Spain do fall to the Aussies here. Australia looking good on their first game out. Then we had Sweden taking on China. Now this was really interesting. I had Sweden down as the best team in this group. And they're not. China beat Sweden 3-1. China throw the gauntlet down and say, hey, we want to be the best team around here. Not you, Sweden. On paper, Sweden had the best players, in my opinion. So, bit of a shocker for me to see that result, but well done to China. So, moving on. After this, we had Spain taking on Denmark. This was extremely close. Closer than I expected it to be. Denmark did come out on top, but it was 2-1 to Denmark. So, you know, impeccably close. Closer than it could... You know, as close as it could be. Spain do fall again, however, and I just feel sorry for the guys. In all fairness, I just feel sorry for them. There's not much they could have done if their country doesn't have the pool of players to work with. Some countries are very gifted in the fact that they have really good tank players, really good DPS players, and really good support players. Generally, you'll see that that translates to having a fairly good World Cup team. Whereas some countries seem to be more prolific in certain areas, Spain have some of the best supports in the world, but don't have anything else alongside their supports, so unfortunately the supports couldn't carry the team to victory. Then we move on to the Aussies again in action up against Thailand. I thought this would be a big match, to be quite honest. I thought this would be the battle for second place. It wasn't. The Aussies absolutely stomped over Thailand 4-0. One of the only 4-0s that actually happened throughout these qualifiers. Very short on 4-0s in these qualifiers, which is good to see. That tells you it was very close. Because the previous two, we've seen a lot of 4-0s from the likes of Canada, USA, South Korea and Finland. All of which qualified for Blizzcon. So, after that, well, I say after that, this was quite a while after that, the Aussies were in action again against the Danish. And this was a surprise. Denmark beat Australia. Now this was a big surprise to me. Wasn't expecting this. It was 3-1 to Denmark in the end. That's a bad result for Australia. I don't think we can really get around for that. I would expect the Aussies really to win that one. I think on paper Denmark are a really good team, don't get me wrong, but I think on paper really Australia are the better team. I think Australia are secretly quite a good team. And they have a really good leader in Custer, so watch out for those Aussies. Anyway, China up next. Now this was a much better match from Thailand. Much, much better. More of the Thailand I was expecting to see. They do, however, lose to China, but it's a 5-mapper. It's 3-2 to China. This is much, much better from Thailand. Much more of what I was expecting to see. And I tell you what, if they could do that against the other teams, say Denmark, Spain, they would cause them issues, and they would have been well within the running to get one of those Blizzcon spots. However, they decided to not do that for some reason. After this, the Aussies were in action again against what I deemed as the best team in the group, Sweden. Apparently they weren't. Yeah. Reinforcers really not had a good time of it lately. The Aussies give us, again, one of the only 4-0s of these qualifiers against Sweden. This must have been really unexpected. I didn't see the game, but this must have been, like, really a shocker. I would not expect Australia to clean sweep Sweden. That's a bad result for the Swedes. Very bad. Not much more I can say on the matter. Really, really good result for Australia, though. But I think, overall, Sweden underperformed in these qualifiers. Yeah. Sorry, Sweden. But I think you could have done better. But, well done to the Aussies. Very good result for them, clean sweeping Sweden. Moving on after that, Denmark taking on China. And another statement that says these qualifiers were really, really close. Denmark do lose to China, but it's 3-2, another 5-mapper. Something we haven't been seeing a lot of in the previous qualifiers. Denmark had a really good qualifiers, to be quite honest with you. I didn't expect them to do this well. Yeah. They had a really good qualifiers, but China, I tell you what, Shanghai Dragons are basically looking for a completely new roster. Just sign up the Chinese team. They've got some bloody good McCree players. And McCree is the lifeblood of Chinese Overwatch. Basically, all the Chinese teams play him to a very, very high level. And China had 3 DPS players that can play McCree to, like, even OWL level standards. So, that's crazy, and I'm sure some of these Chinese players, after their performance in these qualifiers, are going to get noticed. There's a Chinese team, i.e. the Shanghai Dragons, looking for an entire new roster, pretty much. Plus, there's 3 new OWL Chinese teams coming? Some of these guys are going to get noticed. I'm sure of it. They're definitely going to get noticed after their performances, and I'd like to see it. I'd like to see... Sorry, Shanghai, but I'd like to see a decent Chinese team in the Overwatch League, which I'm sure we'll see at some point. Moving on after this, we had Spain taking on Sweden. No surprises here. This is a 4-0 for Sweden. They're just better than Spain. I'm sorry, guys, but Spain just got dealt a really bad hand with their hero pool. Yeah. And their roster just got dealt a really, really bad hand. And hey, if you're a Spanish Overwatch player, become a tank or a DPS, get real, real good, you'll be in that Overwatch World Cup team. And I tell you what, if they can just find some DPS and tank players, they'll be one of the best teams, and I guarantee you they would have been one of the teams going to BlizzCon. Because their support line is fantastic. Can't argue with that. Anyway, moving on. Sweden in action again against Thailand. Thailand put up a fight, but Sweden do beat Thailand. That does mean that at this point, Thailand still don't have a win on the board, which, honestly, I couldn't have predicted coming into this, but, you know, you just don't know. Especially with a qualifier that was this open, with so many teams that could do so well, so many unknowns. These qualifiers were great. They're so unpredictable, and that's the way I like to see Overwatch played. You don't want to know that... You don't want to go into a qualifier saying, well, this team's going to 4-0 this team, this team's going to 4-0 this team, this team is going to finish second, this team is going to finish first, job done. Because it's not entertaining that way, is it? This was entertaining because we just didn't know, really. Whereas last week we knew, well, it's most likely going to be Canada and the USA are going to come out on top. And indeed that happened, and it happened pretty much. Obviously, it was 4-0s all over the place, and... Anyway, I'm babbling. Sweden do beat Thailand. Thailand still don't have a win on the board. Sweden gaining some momentum back after a bad start to the qualifiers. But the problem is, Sweden had to rescue their qualifiers at this point, after 2 losses early on. China in action against Spain. Now, China, after their showing in the first few games, we kind of expected them to 4-0 Spain. Another kicking for Spain, unfortunately. And proof that, unfortunately, at pro-level Overwatch, supports can't carry a team alone. Sorry. But, players like Harry Hook, flipping Neptuno, all the likes, and unfortunately they just didn't have the front line to compete with the big teams in this group, so they're the only team that really got kicked every so often. But very good from China, doing what they needed to do to make sure that they stay in those Blizzcon spots. Then we had Denmark taking on Sweden. This was a must-win game for Sweden. They do, but it's another 5-mapper. 3-2 to Sweden. Denmark dropping a game that really... This was a must-win for both teams. If you lose this game, you're basically out at this point. So you must win the game. Sweden get the must-win. So, good job for Sweden. Bad drop for Denmark, because believe me, this makes a massive difference, Denmark losing to Sweden. Massive, massive difference. Moving on to the last 2 games, Australia taking on China. Now, Australia had to win, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 maps to guarantee their place at BlizzCon. China were already there, basically. So, could the Aussies do it? And get to BlizzCon for the 3rd time in a row. The 2nd time in a row, sorry. I don't know whether they took part in the first BlizzCon. First Overwatch, I don't know. Maybe it's 3 times in a row. Anyway. China do beat the Aussies. But they don't clean sweep them. It's a 5-mapper. And you know what that means? Australia are going to BlizzCon. China beat them 3-2. It's a heck of a match. One of the best matches of the lot. But there are a whole host of really good matches to watch out of these qualifiers. It was a really good qualifier. But that result meant that China would be seed number 1. Australia would be seed number 2. The playoffs were sealed. There is one more match to cover. That was Spain taking on Thailand. Both of these teams didn't have a win on the board, so it was up to pride here. Someone was going to end the day with a win, and someone was going to go a clean 0-5. Yeah, that team was Spain. Thailand beat Spain 3-1. Thailand actually looked decent, unfortunately. I'm a bit disappointed in Thailand, along with Sweden. I thought they would be better than they were. They weren't. And Spain, again, as I expected, it's really not the players' fault. The players that are playing in the DPS and tank positions, they just weren't up to scratch to compete with some of the players they were going up against. And unfortunately, the supports can't carry them through it. But a good showing from Spain. A bit disappointed with Thailand, but a 3-1 to Thailand in the end. And that rounded off these playoffs. So, let's round it up here, shall we? China are number 1 seed. They will be going to BlizzCon as one of the top seeds, along with the USA and South Korea. Australia will go in as seed 2, along with Finland and Canada. Whew. Narrowly missing out, by the way. This was really close, because yes, China 5-0'd. Australia were 3-2 in the end. There were 2 other teams on 3-2, and that was Denmark and Sweden. It came down to map difference in the end. That's how close these qualifiers were. And it's lovely to see. Australia had a map differential of 14, 1 and 7 losses. Denmark had 12 wins and 9 losses. Sweden had 10 wins and 11 wins and 10 losses. So it did work in Australia's favour in the end. And that's what I mean. They had to not get completely swept by China to ensure that they went to BlizzCon. And they were 2-0 down at half time. So well played to Australia. They will be going to BlizzCon along with China. So we are almost there now. We are literally almost there. We have 6 participants for BlizzCon out of the 8. Those are the USA, Canada, South Korea, Finland, China, and Australia. So this is looking really interesting. The last qualifiers are coming up next week. This will be in France, more specifically Paris. This will be your European qualifiers. These are not easy to call. I must say that. It will contain the United Kingdom, Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, Italy, and France. Some really interesting players here. We've got Boombox for the Philadelphia Fusion playing for the United Kingdom. We have Soon, who is an Ellie Valiant player playing for France. You know, there's all sorts going on here. It's really hard to call. Honestly, I don't even know where to start. This is going to be another video where I go over the rosters. The rosters, to be quite honest, the 2 strongest rosters, from what I'm looking at early indications, look like Great Britain and France. But you really don't know. The only 2 with Overwatch League representations are France and the United Kingdom. That's without a doubt. France looks slightly better than the United Kingdom. So at the moment I would put France as on paper favourites. But it really could go anyway. There are some dark horses. Some real dark horses. And I'm sure it'll be emotional because Germany are in this and we all remember Dennis Hoelker. So this is going to be a really interesting qualifier. I will have another video going over the rosters, going over the fixtures, and that will be our final qualifier. And then it's just a long wait until BlizzCon. It's not really that long, it's only about a month. But it should be really, really interesting because I tell you what, the gap's closing to that South Korean team. And they better believe it. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new. And I will see you in the next video. See you then.